Hello and welcome to the GTA Nerdcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Cody.
And James.
Wonderful, James. So today on the Dungeon Hour, we are going to tell you the story of the Absorption Monster. This is a creature we encountered many moons ago in many eons in our Lord of the Rings campaign. So how did we come across this thing?
I mean, we were walking through a forest. Then we came across this river we had to cross. It's like, alright, cool. It's like, oh, there's a current to it. It's like, okay. There's also an undertow. Well, fuck. Okay. And then I saw a sword. And I'm like, ooh, a sword. I want that sword. So, after that, I went to go get the sword. And then completely and literally out of nowhere, oogly boogly boogly out of water, there comes a tentacle absorption thing.
Basically, this thing was along the lines of how you would describe,
Hentai?
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Like a big blob of tentacles and, like, eyes and just a manifestation of fuck.
Yes. So this thing pops out from the shallows with Blake Lively, and it tries to kill us.
Yeah.
And this was actually a really kind of interesting encounter, I think.
It was an interesting fight, and it was an interesting, like, dynamic to it. But, like, my god, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, where did it come from?
Yeah.
Where did it go? Oh, well, we know where it went, but...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just like, because we were just crossing a river. I know I was swimming, just like casually across the river, and I rolled really low, so I got into the undertow and I spotted the fucking thing. And so I was like, oh shit, I need to escape. Now, this is, if anyone is listening to this, has listened to the entirety of the Lord of the Rings campaign, one that we discussed, knows how much fuckery was going on. Here's another thing of fuckery. My character carried like tons, and I mean like literal tons of equipment with them. To the point where, like, I should have been squashed by the amount of shit that was in my backpack.
Yeah.
And just now is when the DM, like, I don't know if he recognized it or, like, remembered the amount of shit he had been giving me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was like, oh, you're, like, being weighed down. Like, how much do you weigh? And I was just like, so much. So fucking much. And he was baffled, like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, let me go into my inventory and check over my 6 sets of plate armor and, like, 30 swords and 50 steel ingots on my rogue blacksmith.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh, well, you're gonna have to drop a lot to be able to swim. I'm like, alright. And that's when we found out about its effects.
Oh boy. Yeah, so we eventually all kind of got to shore to square off with this thing, and we realized very quickly that this was actually a kind of clever idea for an encounter. Anything we threw at this creature, it would basically absorb and then shoot back at us.
Mm-hmm. So right off the get-go, this thing had a couple swords and shields and other things because I had to drop a lot, and it was just like, oh, gee, thanks. And everyone looked at me, and I was like, I'm sorry.
We blame you.
Yeah.
I remember shooting like frost arrows at it, and then as soon as it hit it, it did like pretty much next to no damage, and then it would shoot frost back at us. So we were confused. We couldn't figure out how to deal with this thing effectively. Everyone was just kind of throwing whatever they had at it, and it was just taking it and throwing it right back.
Mm-hmm.
And now, you had the sword, right?
I had the ender of all enders.
Okay, so a while back in this campaign,
I got dicked over for a sword.
yes, it was on like some like random like weapon vendor, right?
It was something like that.
Yep.
So James gets this sword, and we would do this system where we would kind of roll for effects. So depending on your roll, depends on the effect, how well the effect works. And this sword, we didn't know exactly what it did until you brought it out and tested it on a tree.
Oh, yeah. It was the worst test I've ever done.
Yeah, so this sword, essentially, if you rolled low on the d20, would just act as a normal sword. Okay, whatever. We were like, okay, it just seems like a normal sword. Let's try and get the effect to go off. And eventually, you got the effect to go off, and swiftly realized that this sword did damage to you equal to the damage that you would have been outputting. So practically, your target takes nothing if the effect goes off on this sword, and you take all the damage that you would have done.
Yep.
The biggest fuck you of loot.
Pretty much.
Yep. I got it. I'm like, bag of holding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I have no idea why you hung onto this sword, but it
I
really
don't know
came in
either.
handy.
Amazingly.
I mean, thank God I did.
Yeah.
But my God, why did I?
I have no idea how we would have beat this
Oh wait,
thing
no.
without
I
it.
remember why I didn't get rid of it. Because we had a plan where I'd give you the sword, right?
Yeah.
You'd switch out the sword with one of their equipment. So you take
Oh,
their
right.
equipment, put that sword in, and when they try and hit us, they just hurt themselves.
Yep.
That was the plan.
We were just being little shits about it.
Yep, it
Yeah.
was great. We sent the fuck you right back to the DM.
Yeah.
So back to this encounter, we're all kind of on the shore of this little pond, shooting stuff at this creature, and it's turning it right back around on us. And then I don't remember who it was that realized it, that you had this sword, because we had been making a joke of this sword for the last little while. But we realized, we're like, oh crap, let's try and get it that sword. Let's try and make it absorb that sword. So the sword was handed to my character because I had the highest accuracy. And I just two-hand over toss, hurl this sword at this absorption tentacle monster. And it hits it, and it absorbs it. So this thing now, we see it pop up on one of the tentacles. It has this sword at the end of its tentacle. And we're like, okay, it's got it. That's good. And one of the characters that was playing with us was Blake's character, Galvandira was her name. She was our white mage kind of healer. And she's like, I just run up to this thing and hold my arms open, just completely being vulnerable to this thing, and say, come at me, bro. So the DM just looks at her and says, you know if the effect doesn't go off for the sword, you're gonna die. And she's like, yep, it's a risk I'm willing to take. So he's like, okay, this thing just swings down at you with all of its might. And Blake's character, Galvandira, just stands there ready and willing to just kind of accept this hit and accept her fate depending on how well the effect goes for this sword. So we all gather around our DM, and he rolls. It hits Blake's character, and he rolls for the effect of the sword. If it's high, the effect is going to go off. If it's low, Blake's character is going to die. He rolls the die, and of course, it's a 20.
Full effect.
Full effect. So this creature takes full damage that it would have dealt, and it would have killed Blake's character. So that's pretty much what happened to this thing. It exploded into a bunch of sushi.
Yep.
A bunch of little itty-bitty squid-like, yeah.
I know it was gooey bits because I promptly put some in flasks.
Study the effects.
Yep.
Yes, so that is how we dealt with this absorption monster that could take our attacks and throw them back at us. And I think that destroyed the sword, too.
Yeah. Anything that it absorbed was lost.
Yeah.
So I lost a bunch of equipment, but it was all just bullshit equipment anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of a BS encounter as well. Just going across this river and then blah.
Yeah.
And boo!
And then boot, there's the absorption monster.
Oh, well, yeah, that was that.
That was that. Thank you for listening to our brief story of the absorption monster from our Lord of the Rings campaign. Please feel free to watch our other videos, specifically the Lord of the Rings campaign, to get more of a backstory on how this encounter and the campaign itself was complete disaster.
Bye-bye.